What's going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. And obviously, again, it's a little bit different. This is going to be kind of a sign of things to come over the next coming weeks. I didn't want to do an initial reaction to the Premier League postponement, but if you have somehow missed the news, the league has been suspended until April the 4th. Whether or not they come back on April the 4th and actually play matches, we don't know. If they might be behind closed doors, they might further extend the time period. Obviously, right now, everyone is kind of just, waiting to see what happens in some cases, reassessing the situation a few weeks down the line. And if it needs to be extended further, I'm sure they will. So we don't know if it's definitely going to come back on April 4th. But for now, we'll go through the kind of info we had. And I didn't do an initial reaction on the Premier League postponement because I knew, obviously, FPL channel, more interested in kind of FPL stuff, especially on this particular channel at least. And so I wanted to wait until FPL made an announcement. They've literally just tweeted, as you can see when I took the screenshot 14 minutes ago, kind of saying, what does the Premier League postponement mean for FPL? So I'm going to go through that now. There's kind of 4 tweets all together and kind of just talk about initial reaction and that kind of thing. So I think first things first is, obviously this is unprecedented, and they do go on to say that. So I think whatever decision they took, people would have a problem with it. I think some people won't mind what they've done now. Some people will hate it. If they'd done it a different way, it would have been vice versa and stuff, etc. So I don't really initially have too many issues with what's happened. But let's talk about it anyway. So deadlines and points. So this is probably one of the most controversial points, I think. The deadlines and points. The deadlines for Game Week 30 and 31 will remain at their scheduled time. So this Saturday, 11:30, there will be a deadline for Game Week 30. It will pass. The teams will update, I assume. And then we'll be counting down the deadline till Game Week 31. Given all fixtures have been postponed for these game weeks, managers will earn 0 points for their players. So obviously, no players are playing, so you get no points. This is the important bit. Any activity managers undertake ahead of each deadline will apply to that game week. So anything you do before Game Week 30 will apply to your team. So I assume that means transfers. If you make a transfer, that will apply. You'll have that player still in Game Week 31. You'll still have it when the league finally comes back, whenever that might be, as long as you don't obviously transfer them back out. And probably more importantly, if you've already taken a points hit, maybe you saw that Arsenal, Arsenal, I think it was the first match this week to kind of been called off. So Arsenal versus Brighton. Maybe you made transfers and took a hit to get rid of Aubameyang, worried that the matches were going to go ahead and you didn't want him in your team. Well, it looks like if you've taken a 4-point hit or an 8-point hit, used a chip or anything like that, that it's going to come off your total. So if you've taken a 4-point hit, for example, this week, you're going to have 4 less points going into the next week. So obviously you can't earn any points. And essentially anyone that's not taking a hit this week is probably going to get a very minor green arrow. So they also touched on head-to-head leagues and also the FPL Cup. So for the leagues, basically it all comes down again whether you took points hits or not, because obviously you can't score any points this week. So if neither manager took points hits, then it'll basically be a draw and you'll get a 1 point each. If you took a hit and your opponent didn't, your opponent will win, and vice versa as well. So it all just comes down to whether you took hits or not. And then this is for the FPL Cup, if both managers incurred no points hit, so i.e. you're both going to finish on 0 this week, that FPL match will be decided by a virtual coin toss. So obviously, initial thoughts on that, it obviously kind of sucks a bit for whoever's still in the FPL Cup. I would say, obviously, as is going to be repeated loads, and it's repeated by kind of FPL themselves, it is unprecedented. No one could have foreseen this. And yes, it does suck, but we're just going to have to move on. Obviously, it's easy to say for me, I'm out of the Cup. I don't really have much riding on it. But one thing I will say is I don't really have insight into how FPL works, how the tech works or anything like that. I've never really been involved with that or kind of, obviously that info is just not given publicly. But having worked in kind of video games, I know that with stuff like this sometimes, what looks easy on the outside, I'm sure a lot of people are just tweeting them right now. I've not checked, but I'm sure they're tweeting them right now saying, well, just stop the cup, stop the cup. And usually there's a knock-on effect that you can't really consider as an outsider. Or two, there's just sometimes tech limitations. Changing stuff like this, again, seems easy, but it's not always as easy as it seems. That's kind of one thing I learned when I worked in gaming, was that everyone will tell you how easy everything is. Then you ask the developer that actually has to make the change, and they will give you a whole load of reason why actually it's not easy in the slightest. So again, I don't know. I'm just speculating based on kind of previous work I've done, not for FPL, completely outside of that, but you never know. So it kind of sucks if you're still in the cup, but you're going to have to wait and see. Maybe you'll go through by virtual coin toss and go on to win the whole thing. So another big one here, transfers, wildcards and chips. So managers must also be aware any transfers made, wildcards or chips played in a game week where all the fixtures are postponed, which is basically just game week 30 and 31 for now, will not be reinstated. So if I go right now and transfer Aubameyang to whoever it might be, maybe I bring in Jota, that transfer will not be reversed if in game week 32 the fixtures go ahead and I want Aubameyang back. Obviously, if you've used a wild card this week, then that's kind of harsh. You're just going to have to try and set your team as best as you can for the rest of the season. And obviously, if you used a free hit or something, then that's just going to be completely wasted because the players are going to score 0 anyway, and you're not going to be able to change that. And then, yeah, it says there, for managers who took a points hit for transfers, their game week scores will reflect points lost. So again, if you've not taken a points hit this week, you probably will get a small green arrow. If you have taken a points hit, you're going to have a -4, but obviously you will still have that team going forward. So the one thing just to mention here, which I don't think is mentioned in the last tweet, is you're almost better off making a transfer now or next week. So game week 32 is the earliest we could see fixtures. Now, I'm kind of thinking that the lockout will be extended, but we don't know yet. So let's just take into account right now the info we have is that game week 32 is the earliest. So if you've only got one free transfer this week, then you'll also have 2 next week if you don't make any this week. So you could use one next week or this week and then have 2 going into game week 32. So if you still want to think about FPL, that is probably the best strategy. Now, who do you transfer out is obviously a huge question because we don't know who's going to be available even when the fixtures are back. I will probably just make a transfer that I was going to make anyway. So I'll probably just do Aubameyang to Jota maybe. And just go from there. You could maybe look at the game week 32 fixtures onwards because the 30 and 31 ones will have to be rearranged later. So you could look from game week 32 onwards. Maybe you want to bring in a Man United player for good fixtures or something like that. It's really hard to say right now. But if you're still interested in obviously thinking about FPL and trying to do the best you can for your team, then you could think about making a transfer this week and saving one next week, or saving this week when we might have more info next week, of course. And potentially using one next week and then just saving the extra one for game week 32. And lastly, they kind of went on to talk about what happens to the postponed fixtures. So it's the Premier League's intention to reschedule the postponed fixtures when it is safe to do so. Points scored in these fixtures will apply to the game week in which the fixtures are played. So basically, the long and short of this whole thing is the game weeks will continue. And this has happened pretty much every season. They don't add or remove game weeks. And it looks like they're not changing that now. So game week 31 and 30 will still happen. They'll just get no points. Let's say Arsenal versus Brighton gets rescheduled into the same week as game week 36, then it will just be played there. So basically what we're going to have, unless they happen down the line to change this and add more game weeks, what's going to happen is we're going to get a lot of double game weeks and a lot of triple game weeks as it stands. We've already got maybe people talking about double game weeks in 34, 37, maybe smaller ones in 33, 35, 36. Well, now we have another 2 weeks worth of fixtures to schedule for every single team. So, free hit chips and wildcards are going to be really important. Obviously, yes, I understand it's not important right now, but at some point life will move on and we'll start talking about FPL properly again. So there's all these things to think about. So if you still got your free hit and stuff, that's looking pretty good. If you haven't, then look, at least everyone's in the same boat. And there's going to be so many double game weeks. The one free hit is probably not going to cover everything anyway. So points scored in these fixtures will apply to the game week in which the fixtures are played. Makes sense. The Premier League will provide further updates when appropriate. So we're probably not going to hear anything for a couple of weeks now. And we'll have to see whether things can get going on April 4th. And then obviously they finished off their exceptional circumstances and we appreciate the understanding. I think, look, we have to understand that this is not going to happen every single season. It was pretty much out of the blue. Obviously now the postponements happen. They've had to think quick about this. And like I said, sometimes it can just be simple things like knock-ons or tech limitations, which means that they can't necessarily make the easy change that some people would prefer them to do. So, look, people won't be happy about this. I'm sure they could have done it a different way and there'll be a whole lot of other people that weren't happy. I mean, if you've still got chips left, obviously you're in a bigger advantage, but you would have been anyway. And quite rightly, people will say it's not really important right now, and it's not. But when the Premier League comes back, when FPL starts again, we'll be back with all the normal content on this channel. I'm going to look into maybe doing a couple of bits over the next couple of weeks, but to be honest, this channel will be not dead, but obviously a lot quieter than normal because there's just not a huge amount to talk about week to week, and it's probably a good time to take a bit of a break, especially if the season gets extended and the next season comes along even quicker. There'll be less of a break. So lots of stuff up in the air. I don't really have any other info than you have, just what I've seen here, but I wanted to do a quick video. Let me know. I'm sure you will let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below, but make sure you do, because I'm sure lots of people have got good thoughts, bad thoughts about this. I kind of think fair enough. They just continue in FPL as normal. It just means we'll get no points in the next couple of game weeks. I'll have to think about transfers. I'm not going to do videos about what my transfers will be for the next couple of weeks because it really won't be that interesting, I don't think. And I'm to be honest, I'm sat thinking I don't know what the hell I'll do. So we'll wait and see. If you did enjoy the video and you want to see a bit more, make sure to give it a like. Subscribe if you're new. When FPL's back, there will be more videos. Otherwise, I will catch you next time. Cheers all.